Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the opening ceremony of the 28th Space Studies program. My name is John Connolly. I'm the SSP Director and your Master of Ceremonies today. The next 9 weeks will bring the world's space experts to this Ohio University in this city of Athens, Ohio, to teach the world's future space leaders. In doing this, Ohio and Athens will, for 9 weeks, become the center of the space world. I'd like now to introduce these future leaders, the class of SSP15. In the ISU tradition, the SSP participants will now enter behind the flag of their country. To begin the procession, I'd like to welcome for the very first time the country of Albania to join the ISU family. Austria. Belgium. Brazil. Bulgaria. Oh, Canada. China. The Czech Republic. France. Germany. India. Ireland. Israel. Italy. Japan. Mauritius. The Netherlands. Norway. Portugal. Saudi Arabia. Slovakia. South Korea. Spain. The United Kingdom. And the United States of America. Please join me in welcoming the ISU Space Studies Program class of 2015. An undertaking of the scope of the SSP would be impossible without the coordinated efforts of many generous organizations and dedicated individuals. I'd like to thank the many organizations who are making SSP15 possible. First, thank you to our host institution, Ohio University and the Russ College of Engineering. ISU has received the warmest of welcomes from the entire Ohio community, and for that we are grateful. Ohio President Roderick McDavis and his staff, Ohio Executive Vice President and Provost Pam Benoit and her staff, and especially Russ College Dean Dennis Irwin for his decades-plus quest to bring ISU to Ohio. Thank you also. Thank you also to the Russ College staff and the Ohio Local Organizing Committee, representing multiple academic and administrative units across campus and throughout the greater Athens community. Thank you to City of Athens Mayor Paul Wheel, City Engineer Andy Stone, and the kind support from the University Courtyard. Thank you also to the Great Lakes Science Center, the International Women's Air and Space Museum. I'd like to welcome Board of Trustees Secretary Marcy Frumker, and the Ohio Aerospace Institute. A warm welcome to CEO Michael Heil. Thank you for being here tonight. We're also so grateful for how hard all of you have worked and how warmly you have welcomed us. I'd also like to welcome our partners. Thank you to agency partner NASA John H. Glenn Research Center, and welcome to Director James Free, for whom from whom we will hear shortly, and of course our other major sponsors: the French Space Agency, Centre National d'Études Spatiales, the Chinese Aerospace Corporation, the European Space Agency, the Indian Space Research Organization, the Lockheed Martin Corporation, the Aerospace Corporation, the Boeing Company, and the UK Space Agency. Without all of you, this would not be possible. Thank you very much. I'm now pleased to introduce our first speaker for the evening, Dr. Walter Peeters. Dr. Peeters is the current president of International Space University. He is also professor of space business and management, and previously he was ISU's dean. Dr. Peeters has previously worked with the European Space Agency, handling project control and coordination on the Hermes project and the Euromir flights with Russia, among others. He also served as head of the coordination office of the European Astronaut Center in Cologne and as a lecturer in the Technical University of Delft. He has also been visiting professor in nonprofit marketing at the Catholic University of Louvain. I'd like you all to please welcome Professor Walter Peeters.
Thank you very much, John, and thanks for having so eloquently given the names of all the people sponsoring us. And that's always a difficult task not to forget somebody, because the point is that everybody you mention expects to be mentioned, but you forget one, and he doesn't look at you for the rest of your life anymore. So that's always a risky business, and I'm happy you took it over from me. So I can concentrate now a little bit more maybe on our own staff, personnel, lecturers. Although I must also say that I have to echo, dear Mr. President, I have to echo what John said. I've been at a lot of SSP openings, and I do not think ever I felt so welcome like I've been welcomed by you and your staff. That is absolutely out of my heart. It's one of the warmest welcomes we ever had in our existence. So let me, I'm not going to give and present everybody from the staff here, and certainly not from the lectures. I'm just picking out a few ones. The rest you will see, certainly you, during the rest of the program. But we have a number of important people, not more important than the other ones, but at least I would like to mention. We have the one of the lecturers who is also the chairman of the board, Dr. Salaberg, with us. We have also the director of the master program, Professor Welch, with us. That's, so these are two other key persons in the team. I would also like to maybe point out one special lecturer, one special guest, which is Dr. Jim Burke. I have understood that he only missed one SSP, which was the first one. And since then, I don't know how many years, Jim, you've been very, very faithful to ISU, and every time you're there, we really appreciate it, believe me. We really highly appreciate it. And as John said, I like to, in this dual role, I would like to thank and to really show my appreciation for Professor Irwin, because you are here in this very specific double function as being a lecturer and a professor of ISU, and at the same time, the one of Ohio who welcomed us and who brought us here, and we're very grateful for this. But I guess you will allow me to, in the first place, address myself to the most important people, if I'm sorry to say, but I think you will all accept it, here in the room, which are the 110, 111, depends on the late arrivals, participants we have here. I saw some of you counting. It is 30 countries. You are counting them, but then 30 countries represented for 110. A relatively high-level group of people, just to give you, I'm not going to give you statistics, but think about it, that more than 60% of these people have a higher degree. That means master's degree or higher. I think 15% have a PhD. So we're talking about a relatively high qualified group of people. 60% of them have more than 3 years experience. So we're also not talking about just people who have graduated. And what we are very proud of, and you may find it very normal, certainly I would like to say that we have to do a lot of efforts. We have 30% women in the team. And that is really something which I've put as a sort of objective, which is hard to reach, but at least we have 30% women, and we're very proud of that. Now, if you have such a high-level team, what do you put against it? Of course, you have to put some of the best experts of the space world. Otherwise, you would be disappointed. Roughly calculated, what we have collected for you for this program under the leadership of John is something like 4,500 years of space experience, roughly calculated. Now, 4,500 years of space experience is going to be thrown to you. 4,500 years, you have to realize what we're talking about. If you would not put it in parallel but sequential, that means 2,250 years back. So that means we are starting with Archimedes. That was 2,250 years ago. So the first person who really thought about gravity and who really thought about what space was different. That's the knowledge that you will get. Funny enough, if you want to make a link, it's also roughly 2,250 years ago that Athens became an independent town. So very interesting that now, 2,250 years later, we're back in Athens. So you see it's in a different country, but it's still a very nice coincidence. So you get these 4,500 years of experience. You get them to served, if I may say so, during, let's say, the 31st days. That means, and you're all good in mathematics, that you get every day 150 years of experience to digest. Not bad, in one day. But it even gets worse. If you think it's bad, wait, it gets worse. Because you may be used to have a lot of very experienced lecturers in engineering or in law, but not here. Here, what will you get? What's your typical day? First hour, a medical doctor comes in and says, I worked 30 years in the neurovestibular field, and that's all what I know about it. You digest that in 1 hour. Then a lawyer comes in and says, I am an expert in intellectual property rights. I will tell you the next hour what all I know since 30 years about intellectual property rights. Then the businessman comes in and tells you, I'll tell you how I built up my business the last 30, 40 years. And then the scientist comes in and will tell you how he thinks that the stars are born. And he studied that for 30, 40 years. And then luckily, at the end of the day, you get an engineer. As most of you are engineers, you will be a little bit able to relax because you get an engineer putting all sorts of equations about orbital control systems on the board to talk about your specialty. So that's your day, and that's not so unchallenging as you may think, to switch every hour and not having 5 medical doctors or 5 engineers. So that's what we're going to give you, 150 years per day. And then we're going to ask you to implement it. For that, normally, and that might be also of interest for our guests here, we are going to offer you 3 topics. And you can choose between 1 to 3 topics, whatever you like, to a certain extent, because we want to have 3 groups which are interdisciplinary, let's say, stabilized. So we don't want 1 group of engineers, we don't want 1 group of lawyers, we want to have the groups mixed. Because we want you to look at all the aspects of a number of topics. And the topics we have selected for you this year is one very visionary topic called Vision 2040. We are not going to ask you how space will look like in 2250. That would be a little bit too demanding. We will be already happy if you can think about space in 2040 in a rapid evolving world. Then one group is going to look at planetary protection, because that can happen in 2040, that can happen later, but it can also happen tomorrow. Anything can fall down, as it happened 6,500 years ago, or 65 million years ago, when, with catastrophic consequences. A third group is a brilliant idea from Ohio, is really something of today. We all know about fracking, but what are the environmental impacts of fracking? It is something that we ask a number of you to study. And you will see that all these projects are going to be supported by nobody less than NASA. And why is NASA interested in that? They have brilliant scientists, they are brilliant people. But what they don't have is what we can offer, is a group of interdisciplinary and international people. Now that international and intercultural, if I may say, aspect is an asset, but it's also a challenge. Because what you're going to get used to during the last weeks of the SSP is that you're going to have to work with people from completely different cultures. And completely different cultures may have completely different ways of coming to a same result. Many, many years ago, when I was doing operations research, that was my old specialty, I worked with an Indian colleague. We came to the same result. I did not understand how he came to the result, and he did not understand how I came to the result. Afterwards, I think we both were wrong, but that's another story. But working with so many different cultures and nationality is also a challenge, because you are used to work with people who think like you. And now suddenly you will have to work with people who think different. So I ask you only to one little sentence which I'm giving you, which I think every time you should think about when you're working. Different is not wrong. Do not think because it's different that it's wrong. So be open for other ideas, be open for other nationalities and other cultures. The other aspect is more sophisticated. A few years ago, I only realized it when one Chinese alumni, who is now a vice president, by the way, so you see, it was one of the brilliant ones like you are, said, one of the things that I learned here is that I had to learn to work together with people and convince them. Because in a team project, it's a peer-driven. There is no hierarchy. So if you want to impose your opinion, you will have to convince by consensus the other ones. That's not like in industry. In industry, you can say at the end, after meeting, I'm the boss. It's like that. This you cannot do in a team project, so you will have to agree. So, doesn't sound very thing. I see getting a few people depressed. That doesn't. It might even become worse, but not today. I'm not going to go so far like Winston Churchill in 1943 when he became Prime Minister and said to the British people, the only thing I can promise you is blood, sweat and tears. It's not that bad, SSP, but it's close to it. Anyway, now that I told you what a typical day in SSP will look like, I am wishing you all the best for this session. You will really enjoy it, believe me. There will be also very nice times. As I wish you the best, and wishing you the best, I would also like to do it, if my pronunciation is correct, in the language of the majority here. So, how we? Oh, good luck.
Thank you, Walter. I promise you no blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe lack of sleep a little bit, but I'd now like to introduce Dr. Roderick J. McDavis, leader of our host institution, Ohio University. Dr. McDavis became Ohio University's 20th president on July 1st, 2004. As the university's first African-American president and only the second alumnus to lead this university, in this institution's 210-year history. He has been a tireless ambassador for Ohio University students, faculty, staff, and alumni. Dr. McDavis's contributions to higher education include assisting the development of Ohio's Technology Commercialization Implementation Plan, the state's first guaranteed tuition and fee plan and one of the first of its kind performance-based funding models in the nation. As president, he developed and implemented Ohio University's comprehensive strategic plan and has been instrumental in the success of the Promise Lives campaign, which recently surpassed its $450 million fundraising goal. The Urban Scholar and Appalachian Scholar Program, the Interlink Alliance Partnership, and Ohio University's commitment to climate neutrality are among the many initiatives that have resulted thanks to his leadership. Please let me welcome Dr. Roderick J. McDavis.
Thank you, John. To Walter, the other leaders of ISU SSP, and to the participants, to my colleagues and associates at the university, and certainly to those from the Athens community. We are delighted that you have come to the first university in the Northwest Territory for your 2015 Space Studies program. We have much to offer, and you will experience that, but as John and Walter both pointed out, first and foremost, we offer ourselves. We are a people-oriented university. Ohio University has always been committed to encouraging our students to expand their horizons, innovate, and become global leaders. In fact, in my inaugural address 11 years ago, I told students to reach for the highest star. I can think of no better way, and y'all have taken that literally, by the way. I can think of no better way to instill these values than by showing our students that they do not need to see the future in order to understand what that future will bring. I understand that our nearest star is 93 million miles away, but I'd like to challenge our students to dream big. What is it about this state that encourages people to dream big? Ohio produced John Glenn, the first person to orbit the Earth, and also the first American to travel to space. Ohio was also home to Neil Armstrong, the first person on the moon. To date, 25 Ohioans have traveled to space, just as it has done for our astronauts. I hope that Ohio will serve to motivate and revitalize your passion for the final frontier as you gather to share and gain knowledge. We are very pleased to be able to collaborate with the International Space University and to be able to lend our laboratories, equipment, and facilities to this unique learning opportunity. We are also delighted to welcome so many international learners and leaders to our campus community this summer. You see, we are a university that has about 1,900 international students from over 100 countries. So you have come to an environment that welcomes diversity, that welcomes internationalization. At Ohio University, we strive to provide our students with a transformative learning experience, one that provides many opportunities to engage with people around the world whose perspectives may be different from their own. The interactive opportunities that the International Space University extends to students, community members, and instructors reflect the values of Ohio University and make it an ideal partner. To have all of you here with us this summer is a valuable learning experience and a privilege none of us will soon forget. Please take advantage of all that Athens has to offer. We have wonderful regional cuisine, local shops, many summer community events, beautiful parks and trails throughout the area. Also, living in an area with so little light pollution provides an excellent opportunity to stargaze. But I suspect that you are not a group that needs to be reminded to look to the sky and dream. Again, welcome to Ohio University. We are delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. McDavis. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Ohio native and U.S. Navy Captain Sunita L. Williams. Sunny, as we all know her, was born in Euclid, Ohio, just a few miles from the Glenn Research Center. After receiving her commission from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1987, she became a basic diving officer and naval aviator. In 1992, she was selected for the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School, after which she was assigned to the Rotary Wing Aircraft Test Directorate as an officer, chase pilot, and squadron safety officer. In 1995, she returned to the Naval Test Pilot School as an instructor and safety officer. In 1998, Williams, who had then logged more than 3,000 flight hours in more than 30 different aircraft, was selected by NASA for the Astronaut program. After Canada training, she worked in Moscow with the Russian Space Agency on the Russian contribution to the International Space Station, and was the first expedition crew, within the robotics branch. Williams has spent a total of 322 days in space aboard the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station during her missions in 2006, 2007, and 2012. She ranks 6th on the all-time U.S. endurance list and 2nd all-time for a woman. She also holds the women's record for number of spacewalks and cumulative spacewalk time with 50 hours and 40 minutes outside spacecraft. A physical science graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy, she holds a master's degree in engineering management from the Florida Institute of Technology. Currently, she is the Soyuz branch chief of NASA's Astronaut Office Soyuz branch. Please give a warm welcome to astronaut Sunita Williams.
Thank you, John. Thank you, ISU, and thank you to Ohio University. It's really an honor to be here. Now, John already spoiled my my age. I guess I'm donating 50 years of that, thousands of years, but 50 years is a good year. 1965 was a good year, and it brings me back here to Ohio, and I'm really glad to be back in Ohio because my parents met here, just up the road in Cleveland, in Euclid. My dad came from India, and he was doing his graduate work here, and he met my mother, who's of Slovenian descent, and she was an X-ray technician, so we sort of said, we mentioned that they've met in the darkroom, and out popped 3 kids. And so 50 years ago, I was one of those 3 kids, so it's, like I mentioned, very nice to be back here in Ohio. And a lot of other really interesting things happened 50 years ago also. We just celebrated 50 years of the first spacewalk from Ed White down in Johnson Space Center, as well as in March, 50 years of the first spacewalk in the world from Alexei Leonov. So I feel very honored to have been born in this wonderful year, in this wonderful state, and I hope all of you appreciate it, and I thank you for bearing with me for my contribution to your thousands of years of education. So, I am going to show a little video, and I'm not going to talk to it, it's just going to play in the background, but it's going to show sort of what we're doing right now. And it's just a basis, because I think folks need to know what we're doing now to think about what we're going to do in the future. In 2040, I can imagine things will be much different from what we're doing now. I think most folks in the audience are familiar with the International Space Station, are familiar with the Space Shuttle, and familiar with the Soyuz spacecraft. And the Soyuz is how we're bringing people to the International Space Station right now. In the future, hopefully near future, we'll be having commercial crew spacecraft bringing people to the International Space Station, and a follow-on to that, the Orion spacecraft, taking people even farther hopefully setting up the baseline for what you're going to be thinking about for 2040. Maybe we'll go back to the moon, maybe we'll go to Mars. A lot of really exciting things. So with that, I think I'd like to roll the video, and I'm just going to keep talking, and that keeps your attention away from me because I usually don't wear this type of outfit, and wearing dressy clothes is a little bit weird. I usually wear space suits and boots and flight suits and things like that, so we'll just deal with that. So the first thing I wanted to mention about space is be ready. You know, the first time I launched on a shuttle. I was in the shuttle there with Christer Fuglesang from Sweden, Joni Higginbottom, another rookie from the United States. We were on the mid-deck, and we just couldn't believe it was going to happen. And actually, it took 2 times to make it happen. We didn't launch on the first time. But even the first time, I thought it was still a simulation. I didn't really even think it was real. When it actually did happen, we all were laughing and screaming, essentially, on the mid-deck as we were taking off, and our commander was like, "You guys, be quiet. We actually have to listen to mission control and hear what they're saying." But be ready, you know, and my good friend who runs the Boston Marathon, his motto is get to the starting line. So get yourself prepared. Get there with as best quality and preparedness as you can. Just get to the starting line, get to the space shuttle launch, get to the Soyuz launch, get to the starting line. The next thing I would offer, I'm offering 5 points, and you can take them or leave them, one for each decade, I suppose, is be competent at what you're doing. Try to know everything about what you're doing, and that competency will lead you to confidence in the endeavors that you're going to pursue. Know as much as you can about the things that you're going to go out and do, because something's going to go wrong. You're not going to know everything. But if you know as much as you can be prepared for how to maybe fix those things that go wrong. Ask the hard questions and do the right thing. On my 5th spacewalk, you know, it's just a box. You're just going out replacing a circuit breaker box. How hard can it be? 2 bolts, just undo them. Of course, you know, the bolt gets cross-threaded. It's not right, doesn't work. We have to fabricate tools. We don't have Home Depot or Ace Hardware up in space. And so we actually had to use things like a toothbrush to try to get the threads cleaned out and ready to go and realigned. So be prepared, be competent, be confident, and you know you'll get the job done. Ask the hard questions, do the right thing. I think one of the best gifts that I got from the International Space Station is understanding other international partners. I think one of the, and it's even goes to simple things, respect and common courtesy. So when you're on an expedition, one of those things that's important, I mentioned spacewalks and stuff, and that's all important, but one of the most important things is food. You know, who's going to eat what? You get 13 days of food, and you have to divide that out for the 3 of you for the 13 days, and you only get that portion of food until the next 2 weeks happen. So when you notice somebody like Aki Hoshidi, my Japanese colleague, likes lasagna, who knew? But all of a sudden he's like really liking lasagna. Maybe that's the thing that you don't eat. Maybe that's the thing that you pass on and make sure that every single time he gets that. It's common courtesy. Along with that is respect for the people that you're working with and the materials or projects that you're doing. Along with that is maybe making a mistake with some of the things that you might be tasked to do. Own up, apologize, admit, and then move on. And I think that's a better way to keep your group together. I was lucky enough to be the commander of the International Space Station on my 2nd mission. It was sort of a surprise, but I think part of being a leader is actually not really the execution, it's leading up to the event itself. So we had about 2.5 years of training to get ready for our flight to space, and I think that was the most important part, to learn about each other, understand what people's likes are, what people's dislikes are, what are their buttons, how do you push their buttons, how about mission control from all over the world. We have people, thousands of people behind us from Canada, Japan, Europe, Russia, and of course the US that are making sure what we're doing is going to work out okay. And I think one of the things that we learn with that by paying attention as a leader, paying attention as a team member, is you learn a little bit more about the people that you're working for and you're working with. That's the most important thing, I think, keeping in mind. Pay attention to the people that work for you, maybe a little bit more than the people that you work for. And in this international realm, when you do that, you learn a little bit more about language, you learn a little bit more about culture, and that increases people's tolerance of each other, and I think that's huge. And finally, don't let life go by without taking notice. The Soyuz ride home is incredible. I can talk to you all day about it, how there's pyro explosions going off over your head, below you, the parachute coming out of the spacecraft, you bouncing around like a little walnut inside a shell. That calming moment before you crash down, and then the 20G hit, and then you bouncing around the Earth as the spacecraft is coming to a stop. But you need to take notice. You need to not just hang on for dear life. You need to take notice and understand exactly what's happening. The engineer in me was psyched. I was like, oh, that's supposed to happen, and that's supposed to happen. No, this is cool. So take notice of what's going on and how it's happening. I think that is also really important. Part of the best lesson I had is to enjoy the journey, not just get to the end result. So don't let things happen to you, be part of it. So I think you have a very rigorous curriculum here. Enjoy the time that you're here. In beautiful Ohio, like I said, it creates wonderful things, I think. So my brother and my sister, no, I'm just joking, but you will have a wonderful time here. You will be tasked, you'll be busy, but you know what you're doing is planning and working for the future of people on this planet. So thank you very much.
Wow. All right. Our next speaker represents a critical component of our space studies program, that of the Space Agency Partner. And for our partnership with the Glenn Research Center, we are very thankful. James Free serves as the director of NASA's John H. Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Since taking this position in 2013, he has been responsible for planning, organizing, and directing the activities required to accomplish the center's missions. NASA Glenn is engaged in research, technology, and systems development in space propulsion, space power, space communications, aeronautical propulsion, microgravity science, and materials. Prior to accepting the director's position, Free served as Glenn's deputy director and is recipient of a NASA Outstanding Leadership Medal, NASA Exceptional Service Medal, NASA Significant Achievement Medal, and numerous other awards. Please join me in welcoming James Free.
Thank you very much, John. President McDavis, Dean Irwin, President Peeters, Sonny, and John. It's such a great honor for me to be here and share this evening with you. Thank you so much. I do have to say that as I sat and listened to the introduction as what your day is going to be like with a surgeon and a lawyer, and I thought, so you have a president of a university, the president of ISU, the dean of the university, a brilliant spacecraft designer, and John, an astronaut. And I have to tell you, I always speak after the astronaut, and I say, who's really, I don't have slides, I didn't float around in space, who's really listening at this point? And then you get the washed up propulsion engineer to talk to you about NASA. So bear with me, I am just an engineer. But welcome to Ohio. It is a great honor to have you here in Ohio and at Ohio University, even though I'm a graduate of Miami University across the other side of the state. I am happy that they let me on campus tonight. But my pass, I think, expires at 7, so I promise to be gone. And for the next 9 weeks, I hope you all do consider yourselves as Ohioans. And as we're known for many things. This week, we're all keeping our fingers crossed with the basketball championships that are occurring. for those of us that haven't had a championship in Cleveland in 51 years. We're not counting, but we're counting on this. So, but you'll see and experience much of Ohio. President McDavis encouraged you to explore this area. However, Ohio is a state with a rich aerospace history. You've heard some of that. You might know about a couple brothers that started in Dayton called the Wright brothers, who fixed bicycles. Oh, and they also built an airplane. There's an expression in this country that you have to learn how to walk before you learn how to run, and the Wright brothers certainly did that. And the same holds true for aerospace. Before you can fly in space, you first have to fly on Earth, and the Wright brothers did just that. And some of your home countries made possible our exploration of space today and in the future, and your participation in this is your steps down that path. Ohio is officially dubbed the birthplace of aviation and the birthplace of astronauts, one of which you met here tonight. 25, as President McDavis said, John Glenn, just up the road here in Columbus, Neil Armstrong, Dr. Judy Resnick, my good friend Mike Foreman, also from Ohio, and of course, Sonny. I don't know if it's the water, but aerospace careers in this state are huge, and the aerospace industry in this state is huge as well. In this state alone, in aerospace research, development, and testing, it's $10 billion investment every year. There's 1,200 companies in the state with 130,000 people working in the aerospace industry. The number one supplier to Airbus and the number two supplier to Boeing is the state of Ohio. 17% of all of U.S. employment in aerospace is right here. And most of those folks receive their education to fine institutions like this one that we were at today. That wasn't written in there, I actually said that. I just want you to know that. They were so nervous writing this for me because they're like, what do we say about OU? I said, it's okay. This year, our country celebrates an important milestone, and that's the 100th anniversary of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. So 100 years ago, the U.S. decided we need to catch up with the rest of the world, and that's where the NACA came from in 1915, with many accomplishments translating later to what we know today as NASA. And the world went from witnessing that single pilot exposed to the elements, flying a plane at about 100 miles an hour, to witnessing astronauts on the space station, multicultural astronauts on the space station that you saw behind us in Sonny's presentation. This and many other achievements occurred in these 100 years since the formation of NACA. What will occur in the next 100 years or in the next 25 in one of your experiments there in Vision 2040? And the Space Studies program you're participating in will help lay the foundation for those answers. And we stand on that next threshold of exploration with international partners on the space station today. I am proud to say that NASA Glenn, eventually I have to get to NASA Glenn because otherwise I can't justify driving down here. I am proud to say that NASA Glenn plays a role in many areas in that exploration, be it from that launch last December of the Orion spacecraft, going farther than we've gone since Apollo with a crewed vehicle. Orion flew faster and farther than vehicles since the Apollo era. Whereas Apollo was once just a U.S. program, we face a different time today where the International Space Station and programs going forward truly will be international. The world around us is rapidly changing and becoming more and more interdependent. Our priorities for budget and those fiscal realities drive home a simple point that no one nation can afford to shoulder the entire cost and risk of deep space exploration. It requires an international effort, much like your efforts here in ISU. It will take all of us in this room coming together to accomplish those deep space missions. Working with our European Space Agency partners and industry partners, Orion will be the spacecraft that one day takes crews beyond where we've gone before, eventually on to Mars. And even someone in this room, I hope, will be part of that journey. I know for our piece at NASA Glenn, which I'll talk about shortly, we're proud to be part of that international effort. And I personally graduated from an international education. I got my master's at Delft in an international multicultural program. So the experiences that you have here are about what you learn from the lecturers, which thousands of hours of, or thousands of years of space experience, but what you learn from each other and what you learn about yourselves are the lessons that you need to take forward. Those leadership efforts, those teamwork efforts are invaluable. I know they have been to me. Early next month, you'll be up our way at Glenn Research Center, our Lewis Field campus right in Cleveland, and about 50 miles away, our Plumbrook campus out in Sandusky. We are one of the oldest centers in the agency. We've been a leader in aeronautics research since 1941, the foundation of our center as the Aircraft Engine Research Lab, trying to solve the problems for performance of aircraft engines during the war, and also focused on icing research. The years since have broadened our portfolio into space, space power, space propulsion, space communications, still strong in aeronautics as well. The research in each of these areas benefit all of us every day. When you get on a plane, that engine, no matter where that engine is from in the world, has been tested in some form or another at NASA Glenn. You'll also be seeing some of our advanced testing facilities. We operate the world's oldest icing research tunnel. It operates year-round, just so you know. It's not just because it's really cold in the winter. We also operate the only turbofan facility in the world in which we can operate an engine like it's operating at Mach 6 up to 90,000 feet. It's pretty cool. You'll also visit a lot of what we do in electric propulsion for spacecraft, where we're working on the next generation of solar electric propulsion to take cargo out to Mars and beyond, waiting for the crew to get there. At our Plumbrook station, you can't describe the facilities until you're standing in them. They're some of the most impressive and truly largest in the world, including our B2 test facility, where we can fire rockets conditioned thermally, fire them and go back to vacuum conditions. Our space power facility, which is where Orion will be tested, is the world's largest vacuum chamber and most comprehensive environmental test facilities. These facilities are like none other in the world, and I'm glad you'll have a chance to experience NASA Glenn. I'm glad you'll have a chance to experience Ohio, but most importantly, I'm glad you have this time to further your careers, to further your lives, as my international program did for me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this tonight, and enjoy your time here in Ohio.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to our trip up to NASA Glenn. It's really important to have a space agency partner along with ISU and along with a great university partner. That's what truly makes a great space studies program. Now I'd like to introduce our Russ College host, Dean Dennis Irwin. An Ohio University faculty member since 1987, Dr. Irwin has been Dean of the Russ College of Engineering and Technology since 2002. During his tenure, he facilitated the largest charitable gift ever given to a public engineering college, a $124 million bequest from the estate of Fritz and Dolores Russ. He also developed the initial vision for the Academic and Research Center, our classroom home, and has led the development of a doctoral program in civil engineering, 2 new master's degrees, 3 online master's degrees in several disciplines, and a unique fundamentals initiative to equip engineers and technologists of the future with tailored instruction. Prior to becoming dean, he chaired the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences for 5 years. A registered professional engineer in the state of Ohio, Dean Irwin is also a faculty member of the International Space University and has been for a long time my colleague. He's twice chaired the Space Systems Engineering Department at SSPs and has served as a lecturer or workshop leader going all the way back to 1998. He currently serves on the nomination committee for the National Academy of Engineering's Russ Prize, the world's highest honor in bioengineering. He's president-elect of the Ohio Society of Professional Engineers, an associate fellow of AIAA, and senior member of IEEE. Please help me welcome the individual whose vision brought International Space University to Ohio University, my friend, Dean Dennis Irwin.
Well, I'm going to get a little personal. Everybody's been a little professional, but I do have a point to what I want to say. But the first thing I want to say is I chair the Space Systems Engineering Department when John's not available. When he's available, it always goes to him, and that's the most appropriate person for it to go to. So thanks, John, very much for the opportunities at ISU as well. My first fascination, or even knowledge, of space goes back almost 50 years. I'd seen some very vivid, full-page, full-color photos in Life magazine, 1966, I think, Sonny. A Gemini-Agena rendezvous of two spacecraft. I was in the dentist's office for my own rendezvous with his drill. I don't remember much else about what was probably a pretty painful visit, but I do remember those photos. And they inspired me. My family was living on one of those remote, dusty military bases that seemed to be all over the southwest part of the United States at that time. So it wasn't really possible to find anyone, especially my age, who knew much about the space program. But the one good thing about military bases is that they have very, very good libraries, especially if they're in remote, dusty areas. I remember having to convince the librarians, though, that an 8-year-old should be allowed to venture outside the children's area, but they eventually gave in. For the next 7 years, then, most of my time, especially in the summer, was spent reading about anything remotely connected to the space program. Not just ours, also Russia's. And pretty soon that led me to science fiction by Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein, Poul Anderson, Isaac Asimov, and many others. I was limited to 6 books a week. It was a military base after all. But even so, I didn't think they could write science fiction fast enough for me. Maybe the libraries couldn't keep up with the purchases. But whatever the case, I soon branched out into science and math, and this is where fun can turn into a career. I was probably trying to pattern myself after the heroes of the science fiction novels, the space operas, and ultimately I chose my profession of engineering based on in a large part based on those readings. And I was probably following the advice of something that Heinlein had said in a very juvenile book that he wrote called Have Spacesuit, Will Travel, about engineering being the best preparation for a career in space. You might guess that all that reading was a lonely existence. It was. To add to that, during the late 60s, even though we did have some moon landings, during the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, in the United States, space was not the cool thing to talk about. So it only got more lonely to be a space buff as I got older. And even when I worked on site at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, space talk was mostly limited to the upcoming problems of that next shuttle launch, not why we were doing those shuttle launches. That's what I wanted to talk about. So although I continued to work with them for what amounted to about 15 years, I never felt much space camaraderie with my colleagues at that particular NASA center or that particular branch. I never felt comfortable talking about things like human space exploration, a major topic here, I think. Then, in 1998, I was invited to give a workshop at ISU's SSP, actually in Cleveland, Jim, sponsored again, also by NASA Glenn. The first person I met when I walked into their facilities, which were at Cleveland State, was Peter Diamandis, by the way. You'll hear from him a little bit later. Anyway, that day, the isolation ended. I began a relationship with ISU that obviously continues today. I found people who think like me. Since then, I've met most of the people that I associate with now, both on a personal and a professional level. I see them at most once a year, in what seem like almost random locations around the world, but they are among my closest friends. This is the essence of SSP, and this is what you'll discover. You've all heard that networking happens at meetings and conferences, typically a week long or something like that. Well, this is networking on steroids. It's intense and it's long. For many of you, it will be the most significant, transforming event in your life thus far. It will change where you perceive the center of your universe to be. Space will never be a lonely pursuit again. One of the things that I noticed over my 17 years spent traveling to SSPs in various places, Thailand, Canada, Germany, France, Austria, Spain, and other places in the USA, was the best experience for the participants, the faculty, and the staff of SSP occurs when everything is compact in location and as much as possible is a shared experience among the faculty and the participants. Faculty, staff, and participants living together, working together, and eating together brings ideas together, brings people together in a common experience and a common community. At Ohio University, our aim has been to provide facilities that maximize that common experience. And it has truly been our aim, not just mine. Throughout the university, many, many people, many of them in this room, have contributed to that aim with the absolutely necessary and obvious commitment of the top leadership of the university. All of these people are far too numerous to thank this evening, but you'll meet most of them, and I urge you and ask you to express your appreciation when you do meet them. Along the way and toward the end of this SSP, you'll let us know in various ways if we've been successful in that aim. But here I have a prediction. You will be changed, very much for the better. And you'll learn to love this place and ISU as much as I do. And that's quite a lot. Years from now, when we meet again, and we will, at an event, typically a space event, I think, or another SSP, we'll say to each other, I've heard this said about other locations many, many times, so I'm pretty confident in this. Remember SSP15 in Athens, Ohio? That's where we met. Do you remember? And then you'll go on with your conversation. This will happen hundreds, even thousands of times. I see a lot of nodding heads from those friends of mine that I met through SSP. In any case, thank you for listening. And I'd like to welcome you again. I look forward to expanding my SSP family. Good evening.
Our calling card for SSP 15 has become Increase the Awesome, and Dennis truly embodies everything that is awesome about Ohio University and about International Space University faculty. Thank you, Dennis. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce a special video address from Dr. Peter Diamandis. Peter is an engineer, physician, entrepreneur, and co-founder of the International Space University. He's best known, besides for founding ISU, for founding and chairing the X Prize Foundation, which offers large cash incentive prizes to inventors who can solve grand challenges like spaceflight, low-cost mobile medical diagnostics, and oil spill cleanup. He's also co-founder and chairman of ISU's sister institution, Singularity University, which teaches executives and graduate students about exponentially growing technologies. He is also the co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. Peter, take it away.
Hi, this is Peter Diamandis. I'm in Los Angeles at X Prize headquarters. A replica of Spaceship One is over my shoulder, and I truly wish I was there with you. It's my pleasure to add my welcome to the class of 2015 for the ISU SSP. It's incredibly hard for me to believe this is the 28th SSP. It feels like yesterday we were cobbling together the first program at MIT in Cambridge, but it is, and 115 students from over 30 countries welcome to all of you. You're in for an extraordinary summer, an extraordinary impact on your life. I want to take a moment because I know how hard these programs are to put together, all the people, all the support that's required to make it happen. So I want to take a moment especially to thank Ohio University and President Roderick McDavis for your support, to NASA Glenn and Center Director Jim Free for your signing on to be the Center Director partner in this program, to Ohio Astronaut and native Suni Williams, and a special thanks to the Dean of Engineering for your amazing tenacity. 10 years in the work and in the working to bring this together. Dennis Irwin, you're a hero for making this happen. This summer, the single most important thing to all of you 115 plus students is for you to let go of any preconceived notions you have, to come to this program with your minds wide open to any possibility, to use this summer as the time that you can sort of explore those wishes and desires you've always had. If you're a biologist and you love engineering, go do engineering. If you're a architect and you love policy and law, go experiment in policy and law. This is your chance to break away from the bounds of your job, your education, your family, whatever it is, and to explore what truly in your heart of hearts is your passion. The one thing that connects all of us, the reason that we created International Space University back in 1988, was that space is truly an interdisciplinary journey. It's a journey across countries, across cultures, across disciplines. And if I think about it, hundreds of years from now, thousands of years from now, when we look back in the history of humanity, it'll be these next few decades that are the moment in time when the human race moves irreversibly off the planet to the stars. It's right now that we are gathering the capabilities for small teams, individuals like yourselves, to build spacecraft and launch them in a matter of weeks with the ability of microelectronics and microsats and picosats and CubeSats. We're finally getting the capability to launch on a regular basis. I mean, it's amazing to see as Falcon 9 begins to demonstrate reusability of its first stage, as nation after nation increases its launch capabilities. So we're breaking the bounds of Earth. My own company, Planetary Resources, we just launched our first spacecraft a few months ago. Our next one is going up in 6 months. And we're building the spacecraft that will go out to near-Earth asteroids to prospect them. My colleague, Bob Richards, is building spacecraft to go and land on the moon. In success, he'll be the 4th player to land on the moon if he goes and wins the Google Lunar X Prize. It really is a time of incredible opportunity. We're just at the inflection point of our abilities to go out there and harvest the solar system. Everything we've ever held of value here on Earth, metals, minerals, energy, real estate, is near infinite quantities in space. It's the most exciting time ever to be alive, because it's no longer in the hands of a single government or a single discipline. It's in all of our hands to make our grandest dreams come true. So as you've come from 30 countries around the world, from every discipline, every passion, every focus on space, I wish you an extraordinary summer, a summer that frankly makes me feel jealous I have the chance to actually be an ISU student. I remember at the end of the very first program, ISU 88, it was a group of Chinese students who paid me this amazing compliment. They said, "You will never know how lucky we are to be students at ISU." And they were right. Having been the founders, Bob, Todd, and I didn't have the pleasure of actually being a student. We had to actually just run it. So I wish you that pleasure, a pleasure of changing your life, of really supercharging the direction of your passion and vision, and really going for it. Welcome to ISU SSP 2015. An honor and a pleasure to meet you and to have you here. And thank you to our hosts at Ohio University and everybody who's made this possible. Thank you to the faculty, to the staff of ISU for your undying commitment for keeping ISU alive and thriving. See you guys soon.
Our thanks to Peter and all our guest speakers today. Dean Dennis Irwin, NASA Glenn Center Director Jim Free, astronaut Sunita Williams, Ohio University President Dr. Roderick McDavis, and ISU President Walter Peeters for their welcoming words. I'd like to thank you all for attending our opening ceremony, and on behalf of our hosts at the Russ College of Engineering and Ohio University, invite you to a reception at the Baker Center Ballroom, which begins in just a few minutes. Well, the speeches are over now, and it's time for the rocket science to begin. So, I hereby declare open SSP15, the 28th Space Studies program hosted by Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. Thank you.